my title, A Vessel of Love, the design and function of space in Spiritfarer, my talk will be focusing on both the material representation of space and place in form of the design of the player's boat, as well as the concept of showing love and care through crafting spaces as a more abstract factor. I'm basically hoping to show you that in the game, the creation of space is an act of love that helps nurture relationships with the characters, something that the game then rewards through very different ways. But before I begin, I would just like to give a heads up in form of a content warning. Spiritfarer is often described, and here I'll be quoting, as a cozy management game about dying, and quote, touching upon some heavier topics, such as coming to terms with grief, illness, and death in general. I will not dwell on them, more than is needed for exploring the space and place topic, but if anything is very difficult for you right now, please make sure to check in with yourself during my talk and to log out if need be for a break and some self-care. Just a little heads up before we start. Well, with this, let's embark on our journey with a short synopsis of the game. We follow Stella, who takes over her new job, which is actually more of a destiny or a calling than a job, as a Spiritfarer from Charon in the beginning of the game. In Greek mythology, he guides souls over the river Styx to the underworld, so he's basically a ferryman to the dead, and Spiritfarer works very similar to this. Together with Stella and her pet cat Daffodil, whom you can see here on the boat in the right-hand side screenshot, the player roams the unnamed seas and searches for lost spirits. Those spirits are cloaked and hidden, so you can't really see their faces until they reveal themselves once they arrived at your boat. And there you find out that they are all in animal form. There's a reason for this, and if you're interested, I'd like to chat about this afterwards with you, maybe on Discord if you'd like. But because it's a massive spoiler, I'd like to avoid the topic for now, and it's also not really needed for you to understand my presentation and to follow it. So I'll skip over it for now, and we'll just accept it. Stella and the spirits she invites, or who invite themselves sometimes, then travel on to find resources to make the stay on her boat as comfortable as possible by building houses and appliances, or they also go along on quests that give more insight about a specific character and their story. So there's farming, crafting, fishing, cooking, playing music, gathering resources, traveling, and the quests. And the longer the spirits stay on board, the closer the player and Stella can grow with them and learn more about their life and their past. And after their shy time together, Stella ferries each spirit, except for two, to the Ever Door. And now when talking about spaces, the obvious place to start in this game here is what I called the Vessel of Love, in form of Stella's boat, which you can see on the left side screenshot. At first, it is small and broken and very uninviting, but this changes throughout the course of the game. With money and resources, you can, with a very big thank you to capitalism, upgrade the boat to make more space for all of your new travel companions. How you design your boat throughout the game is important to the gameplay, since you need to adjust buildings and the placement on the boat to make sure to have enough space for everything. And after the spirits have left you, to make matters even more complicated, the houses will stay as a memory of their life and your interactions with them. So obviously, the longer the game goes on, the more upgrades the boat will need to have to be able to accommodate everything and everyone. And designing this layout, which I'd call the geography of the boat, in a sense, is a deliberate act of planning. Here I'd like to draw upon Edward Said, who has theorized that geography is, and the quote, the socially constructed and maintained sense of place, end of quote. Applied to Spiritfarer, this shows in two major ways. The first is how the map of the seas grows whenever Stella meets new spirits or discovers new islands. The darkness of the map and the question marks, hinting at something that is not yet known, slowly get revealed, and so there is more space to accommodate all the places Stella can travel to. A second aspect is the creation of the spirit houses. They are basic lodgings at first, little more than empty spaces that then turn into a place once they have been furnished and once they have been lived in. Each character, very similar to us in real life, has their own preferences for how they'd like to live. But more about that later when we meet Summer. To conclude this point, I'd just like to add that in this game, the social construction of place is mostly, if not completely, positive, at least for Stella and the player. Everything that Stella builds, how much she cares about the spirits on her boat. In all fairness, though, she knows nearly all of them fairly well from her own life before she became a Spiritfarer and has now met them again on the boat, but the point still stands. A second aspect I'd like to highlight is that building the spirit houses is not only needed for the story to progress, so new quests can appear once construction is finished, it's also a way in which the game helps us to get to know the characters. So usually, when new spirits decide to travel alongside Stella for a while, they first stay in a guest house. And then at some point, like Gwen does here in the screenshot below, they ask if they could have a new home, and once they have it, they cherish it and treasure it. Having somewhere to stay, built just for them, is already enough to make spirits feel happier, which is Bella's main goal as a Spiritfarer, because she wants to make her guests feel as comfortable as possible during their last journey. And then the next step is to find out how the spirit houses can be furnished to really turn into an individual home that shows care and attention. Here, I'd like you to meet Summer, as I've already announced. She is a spirit in form of a snake, who in her human life was married to Stella's Aunt Rose. Her building is called Summer's Sanctuary, and it focuses on well-being, healing, and the spirituality of nature. To furnish her sanctuary, she wishes for a crystal table, a system to help you control heating, ventilation, and so forth, and a Monstera deliciosa, which is beautiful and loves light, and as a plant obviously helps with oxygen. As the player learns later on, these are no coincidental choices. Instead, in her pre-spirit life, if you will, Summer had once been an agronomic engineer, and as such had to use loads of chemicals that later made her sick and have most likely led to her developing breast cancer. While she was in treatment and during her recovery, she became deeply interested in topics such as spirituality, the protection of nature and biodynamic farming, as well as the healing powers of calm and serenity. Her entire building here becomes a testament to her life experiences. And in furnishing the house the way Summer wants her to, Stella and the player gain a deeper understanding of her. So all the spirits are on the boat because they A, need to come to terms with something, and B, want to feel cared for and cherished one last time in their lives. Summer is just one example of how the storylines, the gameplay mechanics, and the core themes of love, memory, and eventual loss intersect. Finishing the spirit homes is essential for the characters to then be able to move on. And once the spirit house had its final update, and once the pressing quests the character gives to Stella have been finished, they will usually ask her to accompany her to the Ever Door. I've already alluded to it several times, but here it comes. The creators of the game have clarified that they modeled it on the German Rakotsbrücke, close to the German capital Berlin, which is also known as a Devil's Bridge. In folklore, Devil's Bridges are built in such a particular way, with them being so thin and showing a near-perfect half circle that the water then mirrors, that they could have only been built by the devil, or so one says, who, in exchange, wanted the soul of the first being who crossed the bridge. But that's just as an aside. As far as I know, there's no explicit talk of devils or angels, or of religion in general in the game, and it's more the shape of them that inspired this version of the Ever Door. But what stands out to me when I look at the screenshot here is the contrast between the red water, which is curious because in all other instances it is blue, and above the white trees. In a way, one could read it as a reference to heaven above, with all the whiteness and purity and innocence, and below there's this unmistakable red, something that wants attention and maybe even feels threatening in a way. Or maybe that's just my bias, having grown up in a Christian household. But I feel like this uncertainty and the clash of two contrasts is definitely highlighted here, and it is a very ambiguous place. The game's Ever Door, also through its form, obviously signifies eternity. We have the never-ending and always repeating circle, but we also have the name, Ever Door. It spells the ending for the player's time with each character, and for them, It is the door to something new, and it's also where the game starts and where it will eventually end. Once Stella has guided the lost spirits to the other door, and once they have all left, Stella returns to the boat alone, but something stays. Which is the night sky, as well as the spirit homes. Whenever a spirit travels through the other door, a constellation that resembles the animal form appears and twinkles whenever it turns night throughout the entire game. And here in the screenshot, we have a buck who was some form of bird below, and we have Gwen, a deer, above. As constellations, they are pretty much a constant. So the stars never truly disappear, at least in the span of our human lives, as cliched as that sounds, so they are never truly gone, which is, in the context of the game, meant as consolation. And as such, the night sky becomes yet another space that transforms to hold memories and to speak of love and loss. And whereas the Everdor and the night sky cannot be influenced by the players, the big part of the gameplay, the design and constant redesign of the boat, is one of the main mechanics. And to close up this exploration of space and place for now, and just to reiterate, the creation of space in its various forms is an act of love, compassion, and understanding that is essential to the game. Just a moment. Okay, I think Teams has been acting up. I think you can see the other slides now.
Yeah, they've just started to show up as like a slideshow for us. So.
My apologies about that. That is very weird what Team's been doing.
Okay,
but that is okay. Did you get to see the screenshot of the night sky? Because it is very beautiful. Or would you like to see that again?
You can see it again just in case people haven't managed to see it.
Oh, great. So here it is. And with that, I would like to go into the next topic. Because in a way, it might seem weird to call Spiritfarer a cozy game, seeing as at its heart, there's always the ambivalence of weighing love and friendship against the eventual loss of the spirits. But to quote Marvel's Serious WandaVision, what is grief if not love persevering? So I'd like to talk a bit further about the genre of cozy games and about concepts of love in Spiritfarer. There's many characteristics that make a game cozy or wholesome. And coziness is usually defined as something that is comforting, nurturing, it makes you feel warm and cared for, and cozy games are usually without too much combat, and they vibrate gentleness. As I've already said, gathering resources, taking care of plants, crafting, and interacting with a newfound community are all core elements of cozy gaming, and they are, of course, essential to Spiritfarer. The LA Times, in a love letter to cozy games, has very pointedly summed the genre up as games in which the joy is uncovering a universe rather than obliterating it, often with ideas on how to be better custodians of our current one. Finding solace or shelter from our real-life troubled times is, of course, one of the main reasons why games like Stardew Valley or Animal Crossing or, case in point, Spiritfarer are so successful and popular. And the talk on placemaking and terraforming games as relationship building practice that we've heard earlier in the week and which I've really enjoyed already touched upon how games are fostering digital relationships and how they can work as social spaces. So at this point, I won't go into any more detail on that. Considering that there are so many life simulation games out there in different shapes or forms, Spiritfarer's gameplay is by no means a new kind of game or revolutionary. But what is so surprising and maybe even fascinating to me is how much Spiritfarer places an emphasis on caring for others to experience the warmth of wholesome gaming instead of only making a life for oneself. In a way, the players are experiencing coziness by creating the houses or favorite dishes, or maybe even memories with the characters they encounter, and by learning how to best take care of them. This brings me to a more specific look at how the game fosters loving relationships between Stella and the spirits. And to understand how love is at the heart of the player's interactions with each character, I would like to draw upon Gary Chapman's concept of 5 love languages. There are no romantic storylines between Stella and the characters, and I feel like there can't be one theory on love that encompasses all and that is exactly right, because love is obviously so abstract and you can't really put it in a neat or scientific box. But I feel like the theory still helps to understand how the game manages to place such an emphasis on loving and caring. When Stella engages with her newfound friends, she has different ways of interacting with them, as you can see on the right-hand screenshot. She can give them a hug, which fits in with Chapman's idea of physical touch. She can commit acts of service, which is seen through when she builds houses or other appliances. Gift giving is also an option that the game highlights, so Stella can either find food or resources for them to make them happy. And then words of affirmation and quality time can both be found when the player goes on extra quests with the characters to either simply share in an unrated adventure or to learn more about a specific character's backstory. Those little excursions are usually where deep emotional conversations take place and where the souls find new courage in talking to Stella, who supports them. Through all these different ways of interacting that are core mechanics of the game, the storylines develop, which makes Spiritfarer, which is very narrative-based, deeper and richer. And Stella earns new resources, both material and immaterial, to continue on their journey together. Here, we can come back to our spirit friend Summer. The reward for understanding her and how her life has contributed to making her become the person she is transcends into the game play. So, after the player has built a small garden, Summer will often play music to the flowers to help them grow and to nurture them, just as she nurtured herself during her time of recovery. Caring for the characters gives you in-game points or an advantage in the search for resources or help, but it also has the potential to warm your heart and to build the emotional connection needed for the game to work as it does and for it to be so powerful. The game rewards compassion. And one of the main ways this compassion shows itself is through the creation and furnishing of the spirit houses that then turn into homes, a place of love. What I hope to have touched upon in my presentation today is how Spiritfarer uses space and place to establish intimacy between the characters. Comfort is hard to come by in these troubling times, so it really is an act of service. Then there's always the heartbreak potential, in that one wishes that the characters that grow dear to one's heart could have experienced this sooner in their lives. And in a way, I feel like this is a reminder to open up our eyes to the spaces we are in and how we create and influence them. I'm pretty sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but if one wanted to find a way to apply Spiritfarer's message about space and place to our real-life challenges, then I'd say that it teaches how creating inclusive spaces and tackling systematic discrimination in terms of the design of public spaces is vital and essential to our well-being. That should be at the core of how we build and live in a socialist society in which we care about and for one another. And now I'm stepping off the soapbox. I feel like the way in which spaces are handled in Spiritfarer also shows how they can work as a consolation, how they can soothe grief. Because on the boat, the homes of those that have left to go into the light or whatever follows stay. Spirit houses are permanent, just like memories. As such, they are both a reminder of what one has lost, but also of the person one has known. So there's this dual character of sadness and joy that, in my view, captures the confusion and ambivalence of real-life grief in a very poignant way. It's similar with the star constellations that are a constant companion to the player and show that the characters have never really left them and the traces are still visible. And I feel like in all the emotions it evokes and the topics it deals with, loss and grief and joy and love, Spiritfarer essentially captures humanness and all its conflicting emotions via the vehicle of space. I would like to let Summer have the last word here when she talks to Stella about gardens. In a way, gardens are also filled with beings that need nourishment, love, and light, so it felt only fitting for me to borrow her expression of a vessel of love for the title of my talk. This brings me to the end of it. Thank you all for your time and for lending me your ears. Thank you for understanding the technical difficulties, and a special thank you to Lisa and the entire Multiplay team for creating such a lovely space to share our thoughts in. It's been a pleasure.